This is the next episode in trying to get this little mower running. It's a Briggs & Stratton 125cc engine. I did replace the rewinder on it in the last episode, so that's working fine. And I pulled the cord on it. It does prime. But like a lot of mowers that I run into, it will start for about 5 or 6 seconds, and then it stops. It won't continue to run without re-priming it. So I've got to prime it again, and then it'll run for 5 or 6 seconds and shut off, and it just does that over and over again. So it won't run, it won't consistently run, but it does start and it does prime. So what that tells me is that there's a very, very, very good chance that it's going to be the carburetor. It looks like whoever had this last worked on it a lot and replaced this plate here, because this looks brand new. This primer bulb and everything's clean under here. Usually with these little beat up mowers I get in, I get a lot of dirt and grass and debris under here. This is clean, so I think they've worked on it. They may have replaced the carburetor as well, because I don't see a lot of dirt around it either. But they may have put fuel in it that has ethanol in it and left it for too long, and it may have clogged up this carburetor. So we're going to go into this and solve the problem. So the first thing you got to do, I recommend you do, is don't try to remove this plate and get the carburetor off and be messing around with hose clamps and trying to pinch the hose to keep the fuel from leaking out and all that. What I want you to do is take the rewinder cover off. So we're going to do that. That's 5/16 screws. There's 3 of them. So we're going to get these out of here. And try not to lose them if you turn it over like I'm doing there. Well, I got that one out, now I'll get this one out. So I got all 3 of them out. I had this rewinder off in the last episode because I had to install that one. And that's a replacement because the other one was broken and beyond repair. So now what I recommend you do again is we're going to take off the tank, and we're going to take off the carburetor all in one piece, and that way we're not spilling gasoline everywhere and having to reach up in here in this real tight spot with you know, and trying to pinch off fuel lines and all that stuff. So we're going to need 2 sockets to get this plate off, and that's a 5/16. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's 5/16. Yeah, on the outside there, and on the inside, what attaches the carburetor is this little purple guy here, and that is a 9/32. So let's get the outside ones first. So there's one here. Let me show you this on a little closer. There's this one here on the outside, and this one here on the outside. And those attach this plate to a metal bracket. This one, I'm glad it's shiny, is the 9/32. And then there's another one. You can't really see it too easily, but it's under the primer bulb, and it's a 9/32. And those attach this plate to the carburetor. So they're going into plastic. So you got to be careful not to over tighten these, or you'll just strip out the plastic. So let's get this off and set the phone down. I just wanted you to see what I'm doing. So there's one 5/16 screw. Here comes the other one. Nice to be working with a plate that's this clean, super clean. I've got me a little piece of cardboard to lay it out here on the table to work on the carburetor once it comes off. If this thing's new, like I think it might be, I just wonder what's causing it to malfunction. I do think that that's what it's going to be, is a clogged up carburetor. All right, and here's the key with what I do. I'm going to get this little plate off of here and set it aside. And then just think of this as a unit. The carburetor and the tank, it's a unit. And we're going to take the tank off by getting it up off these metal brackets, which let me show you. It's a little plastic tab that fits down in this groove, a plastic tab that fits down in this groove. And what you do is rock this back and forth. You just wiggle it back and forth until, and while you're pulling on it, pull up, and then the tank comes loose. So let's do that. Yeah, just want to make sure I'm still on the camera. All right, so I'm going to put my fingertips on both sides of these edges and start rocking back and forth. Okay, it's off. I'm going to set it to the side. And now, you kind of do the same thing here. You wiggle, wiggle, wiggle and get this little carburetor off. So I'm wiggling, wiggling, and pulling it towards me. Wiggle, wiggle, pull it towards me. And the reason it's not just popping off is because there's a gasket, a rubber gasket under there to keep air from leaking around it. So now we're going to swing, I think a bug flew in my mouth. I'm going to swing this out. That's the other reason you want to do it in one piece. Was on the last one, or maybe one before that, somebody had tried to get this carburetor off without doing this, and you'll snap that off, break it. Then if you don't have a lot of spare parts around, you are doomed. It's not gonna, you got to be able to do anything with it. So, and that's why they quit working. That's why I got that mower, because they had broken this off by not doing what I'm showing you here. Okay, so just remember, when you reassemble this, this goes on top of this bracket. It's not down here, it's on top. All right, so now see, there's no leaks. I love that. Let me get something to put this in. This is what this block here is what I set my engines on, but I also use it for this. Let me move the camera. So I set the fuel tank there, and then I can get this carburetor off with minimal leakage because I've got it, you know, kind of tilted back here. Let me get a good flat pair of pliers. This is what I use for that. You see how flat those are on the end? That'll grab the hose clamp really good. So I'm going to grab the hose clamp, slide it up this way. I'm actually glad that slipped down in there. And now I'm going to hold this with the pliers just to stable. I'm not squeezing much. I just want to be able to hold it so I can get this off. And then you make big circling things to get this off. All right. So there it is. Now this is one of the great mysteries to me with these Briggs engines that I've talked about before. This jet right here on most of them is white, and it lets air in here so that when you prime it, it's able to pull air in through the hole that's here. On these gray ones, there is no hole. So this is completely useless, but Briggs puts that on there. This doesn't do anything. I've seen them where they wouldn't prime at all. I've seen some where they primed with this in here. But what I do is I'll replace this with one of the white ones I have, or I'll drill it out. So there's a little hole there. If you guys can help me solve that mystery, why Briggs would put a useless piece of plastic in here that serves no purpose, I'd love to hear it. So let me see if I can get the gas out of this thing into a container or something, because there will be a little in this bowl, because there is some gas in this tank. You see I've got it tilted back because I don't want it leaking out of there. Let me see if I can drain this off here. At least get most of it out. So there's, okay, so I don't know if you can see that, but it's starting to drain. It's kind of the sweet spot where the needle is not blocking it. The thing that lets fuel in so your engine runs is now out of the way and letting a lot of this gas out. Even with all this, there'll still be some left in the bowl, so I got some of it out. Okay, now let me set this over here. I'm going to go ahead and get a paper towel out because there may be a little spillage. And get an old butter knife or a kitchen knife that you'd use to eat dinner with, that you keep, and get an old other one you don't like, or get one from the thrift store, because these are great for this, because you've got to separate this, and it's hard to do with a pocket knife. These aren't going to cut anything, and it's a wedge shape, a very gentle wedge shape, so you can use that to get this bowl off. But first I've got to get the screws out, so let's do that. This is the same 9/32 as the screws that attach this to the carb plate. All right, so we got those out. And remember, you're going to end up with 4 of these that look the same, that attach the carburetor to that plate. That's the short ones. The long ones hold this bowl on. So don't get confused by that. Okay, now, here's my little butter knife, kitchen knife, whatever. And I use this point to get in under this edge of this bowl. And if I slip, see, I'm not gonna cut myself. It's not very sharp, but it's sharp enough to do what I need. See how that's in there? And now I push this way, and then it starts moving that bowl away because it's thicker. Okay, and now I turn it over, and it's even thicker on the back side. Now I slide it up there. Okay, now I've got a good gap, see? See that gap there? It's working good. Now, come around this way, do the same thing on this side. Let me make sure I'm in the camera. Yep, I am good, okay. So I take the sharper side and start coming in like this on this side. Okay, now slide it in. There we go. That popped out. I got a little bit of gas spillage here. That all looks pretty good. Let me pour this off in this little jar I had here. Okay. All right, so we got this separated. Let's take a look here at what's going on. That all looks remarkably clean, but that jet may not be big enough. There's a very tiny hole in that in this brass piece, right? Something to point with. Right there. You need to see light in there where there's a hole, and this one's real tiny, and that's what happens. They get packed off with junk from dirt and usage, and bad choices of fuels and things like that. And this one does look like it's too small, based on all the repairs I've done on these. Okay, so I want to also go in here and see what's underneath. Now the way to get this off is you get a really small screwdriver. And this plastic piece in here, this is where all the action is on getting the fuel mixture and everything correct. It pulls fuel through that tiny little hole, and if it's blocked, it'll run for a while and shut off because it's not getting the fuel it needs. If you look real closely at this, there's a gap right there on this side and another gap on this side. So pick your favorite one. I'm left-handed, so I'm going to go in on the left and put it right there. Push down. It's a very fine gap. I mean, it's hard to see, but it's right there. So you push down, make sure the screwdriver's in there, and pull up. And now this cartridge is out, and I can look at it. And it looks unbelievably clean. So there's usually a little fuel left down in here, and I want to get rid of that. So I'm going to step this away from the camera for a second. I'm going to turn it over. Okay, there really wasn't much in there at all. I don't see any issues. I don't see any issues with this carburetor yet. So now I'm going to separate this. I'll show you what I mean. Let me get my gloves off for this because it's fine work. And a paper towel. And now we start squeaking and wiggling this piece off right here. See that? So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to start moving side to side, hold the top. Okay, see it's starting to come loose. Let me show you what I'm seeing. See how it's not out of whack sound? So I've got it off. So now keep doing that and pull this apart until it comes loose. It's tight. I do not see any problems with that at all. You want to make sure these little holes are clear, and they are. So that looks good. I suspect that the problem is that tiny little hole right there. And one of the ways I test that is to go to my wires that I use for clearing these jets. And these are just an assortment of them. These are different sizes. And I know from experience that this big one is not going to fit in there. Okay, but the middle one, in terms of thickness, which is this one, does, and that tells me if it's clear or not. And see, it's not, okay, there it goes. So this may be sufficient. See, there, it may have just been blocked that much. So I'm going to go in and around here and kind of wiggle that around. So that's good. Let's see, those look like the large ones. That's the medium. These are the real fine ones. See, this goes in there real easy. That is super easy. Let me try the big one again. I don't think that's going to go in there even on a new one. And that may be all it takes to clear that, because everything else looks good. But I did have to sort of push on it and wiggle it around to get it in there. Now, in reassembling this, I do put, nobody else does this that I know, I do put a little drop of oil, because That's what it grabs onto. It makes it so hard to get off. And I put a little drop of oil right there, or WD-40, whatever. So let me get a little squirt of that on there. So I'm going to squirt it right there on that little edge. See that little edge? That's going to hold it. But I want it to slide on there. It just doesn't take much. It's a tiny little drop. Okay, so now we're going to reassemble. You have to swing this around so the flat part here matches up to that flat part. And then you start pushing and wiggling, and that little drop of oil or WD-40 is going to help you get it back in place. Okay? So I don't know if you can see that or not, but I can see a little more light in that brass fitting or jet. And every bit of fuel in this mower's got to go through that tiny little hole when you're mowing with it. So now we can push this in, and this is the gasket area, and you want the jet on the same side as this rubber gasket, and it's going to kind of sit nicely down in there. If you try and put it in this way, it's not going to go. See, it's sitting up too high. So it goes in like that. Now I'm going to take my little kitchen knife here with a flat side and tap on the top. It's not in yet. It's getting there. You have the sound changed. That's because it's fully seated now. Now I'm going to run a little towel around in here. This bowl. And I think we'll be pulling the cord on this thing in a second, because that's really all that I can see wrong with this carburetor. I'm going to do a little carb cleaner up in here on these openings. I don't need to put any carb cleaner in there because this is useless because of this blank plug. I may come back and drill that out if this mower doesn't run right or doesn't start. But there is a port there and there's a port there. So I'm going to hit that with a little carb cleaner. Hang on a second. Let me set this down. It probably doesn't need this because this carb is so clean. I think it's just that one jet. But that jet pretty much does everything on these carbs. So I'm going to do one little shot in there and one little shot in. So I did one there and then one here in this opening. Be careful it doesn't splash back on your eyes. And I want to get this off this rubber. I don't want that carb cleaner touching that rubber for very long. Definitely not. Okay. So now we got... I want to move this little pin over just a little. I don't like where it's sitting. Okay, now it's a little more centered. Yeah, okay. So now I can reassemble this carburetor. And the way to do that is you see this, how this sits up so high? You've got to have this rectangular piece on top of that. And then when you do that, these holes will line up with the screw holes. So that is correct like that. Okay, so now let's get our short little 9/30 seconds, I think it was, and begin to install this. And I've kept the carb cleaner away from the bowl gasket as much as I can because it'll mess that up and stretch it out. You don't want that. I'm going to start screwing these in. I want my drill on the lowest setting for torque because I don't want to over torque this and going into this plastic. Okay, it's starting to seat. Okay, now I'm just going to use hand pressure. So that's all you need there. I'm just going to turn the carburetor instead of the drill. Okay, so that's as snug as you want it. All right, Now I'm gonna get my gloves back on because I'm handling that dirty fuel tank and try and get this carburetor back in on that fuel hose. So I'm keeping the hose up and get this thing started and start wiggling and pushing. Okay, and now it's in there. You want to turn the red gasket towards you, and then you want your hose clamp ears toward you as well. Where did my big flat, there it is. A big flat bladed pliers, and you slide this thing over there. Let her go. Oh, I want those ears facing me more. There we go, in case I have to come back and take that off again. So now this is ready to put back on. So let me swing the camera back over here towards the mower. I want you to see this. So I'm going to reinstall this. The gasket and a little white clip that holds that rubber gasket in place is okay and in place. So I'm going to swing this arm out, this metal arm, give me lots of movement to get this where it's going, and I can easily make that turn. You can't do that if this is, you know, all attached up in here. That's why I take this all in one piece. And now you can put this in place and sort of get it close. Okay, it's close, sort of in position, and now I can take my tank and I start sliding it into place and push down. It goes in, so the carburetor is there and it's ready to push on. I'm going to try and do this without the gloves so you can see it up close. So that's all lined up there, and now you got to be careful of this piece because it's going to want to pop out unless it's just perfect right in there. See it? You need to have it where it's going to be in that slot, and that is lining up. And sometimes I'll drop a little drop of oil there if I need it. But it's sliding on pretty good, so I'm wiggling, sliding. Let me switch hands. It's not quite there yet. See that? So now it is fully seated. This is working the way it should. And so I'm going to go ahead and sign off now because I'm doing the reverse of what I was. So now I'm going to put the little plate on there where it'll prime, and we're going to pull the cord on this thing. And I'll film that for you, and we'll see if we solve the starting and stopping problem. So let me turn this off now, and then we'll be back in a minute.